Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to the penultimate episode of Season 3 of Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast, the show dedicated to amplifying the amazing, exciting, wonderful, incredible, inspiring stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. As I've said, today is our penultimate episode of Season 3, which means it's the second last time we are going to be venturing through the land of the lemurs. This season, we've been talking all about Madagascar and the incredible initiatives and animals and plants and people of the country. It's just been a fantastic ride. And as we reach the end, we have one more new charity to introduce. We have Conservation Fusion. Now, Susie Louis, their director, is here to tell us all about that today, and her expertise is in education, empowering communities in Madagascar, and building bridges between schools in the USA and in Madagascar. So it's a really interesting conversation all about kind of, yes, education and inspiration. And yeah, another really great one. I'm running out of positive descriptors because everyone has just been so kind and so amazing this season, and Susie's interview is no different. It's excellent. Now, beyond her expertise, some more specific things we get into that might interest you. If you haven't heard of the Disney Conservation Fund, we talk a lot about how they are supporting conservation fusion, which is quite interesting. It's a fund that I didn't really know existed until quite recently when the new Lion King came out. They did a bit of advertising around then, and that's when I kind of started to recognize and appreciate it. So we talk about the Disney Conservation Fund. We also talk about, yes, conservation fusions work, and of course, some species that we haven't covered in much detail before. So, because her focus is on education, Susie gives us a brief rundown and some fun facts of species such as ring-tailed lemurs, radiated tortoises, and sifakas. And yes, it's fantastic and really interesting. And I hope you will all learn something new while you're enjoying the chat. I will, of course, disappear now and get on with the interview. So, all that remains, I guess, for just now is to say thank you so much for listening to the series. I hope you've enjoyed everything so far. And if you have, make sure to click on to subscribe to the series so you don't miss out on any future content. And you can follow us on social media at Pangolin Podcast as well. And yeah, of course, thank you so much for joining us as we explore the land of the lemurs. Thank you so much. Welcome back to the show. I am now joined by Susie Louis, the Director of Conservation Fusion. Her expertise is in education, empowering communities in Madagascar, and building bridges between schools and communities in the USA and in Madagascar. And she's here to tell us all about that today. So thank you very much for joining me today, Susie.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I wondered, just to get us started, I wondered if you could introduce yourself to the listeners and just tell them just a little bit about your background.
Sure, my pleasure. Again, my name's Susie Louis, and I'm the Director of Conservation Fusion. We're an international nonprofit organization focused on education. And a little bit about myself is, I've always enjoyed working with animals and had a real love for the environment and nature. And my background is that I have a degree in biology and I'm a former zookeeper. I worked at the zoo in Omaha for many years, for 13 years. I spent some time working as a zookeeper, but the last like 7 to 8 years that I was there, I worked in the Center for Conservation and Research in the Molecular Genetics Lab. So that's how I kind of really got into working with lemurs and also a wide range of animals from around the world.
That's really interesting, actually, and it's an interesting kind of. It'll be good for people to know kind of where you started and how you built up to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And what I actually, the first kind of thing that jumps into my head then is your organization is kind of focused around education. So,
Mm-hmm.
what made you want to jump from doing the molecular, really scientific, science lab based, I guess, work to jumping into the education realm. What made you interested in that part of conservation?
Sure. So, like I mentioned, we were working when I was working in the genetics lab. We were working with projects all over the world,
Hmm.
and we had kind of a large focus on species from Madagascar. So we had Malagasy students. We would actually collect samples, would help them collect samples in the field in Madagascar, and then they would come to the U.S. and work with us in the lab. And as I was working with all these scientists from all around the world, we could look at so many different things using molecular data. We could see population structure, new species, rivers and roads as barriers. We could learn all these different things about lemur populations and other wildlife populations. However, it just felt like if we really wanted to save endangered species, it's all about community-based education. Because even if we have all this data, if there's nowhere for these animals and plants to exist anymore, then essentially they'll become extinct. So if we really wanted to conserve these species for the future, I felt like it was really all about community-based education. And at the time, no one was really doing that in Madagascar. So that's what kind of inspired me to start Conservation Fusion.
Hmm. That's amazing. And can you tell us now that you have that leads on perfectly to my next question, which was going to be, can you tell us a little bit about Conservation Fusion? So that's kind
Sure.
of where it was born, and how did it kind of develop from there? And yes, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So we're an international organization. Education is our mission is actually educating to build and strengthen our world. We have a huge focus. Our focus really is on the island of Madagascar right now. However, we're all about connecting people. Everything we do is conservation, education, and collaboration. So we are working with communities in Madagascar, but also right here in the United States. And we partner with all kinds of different organizations from universities to grade schools to after school programs to zoos and aquariums. And we have so many different partnerships. And I think that kind of ties back into that original question of like what inspired me to start Conservation Fusion. And part of the inspiration was just to create a model for other conservation organizations about collaboration. Because especially in the scientific side, like conservation and research, there's a lot of competition, which actually is good because that's always pushing people to be their best. However, I really felt strongly that there were so many conservation organizations almost like competing for maybe the same dollars or for ownership of projects. And I just felt like we could start an organization that actually created win-win opportunities for everyone involved.
That's yes. I think that's the perfect approach going forward as well, is that if we want to, these issues, while some of them are very local and some of them are very kind of situated in one place, a lot of conservation issues are obviously global things that we have to all kind of work on together to solve,
Mhm.
and kind of help one another out. So it's the perfect strategy going forward to do this kind of format of
Mhm.
organization is really interesting. I just, yeah, there's so much that we've talked about already that I wanted to ask about. And I guess before we dive a little bit deeper into your organization, there's one thing that I want to ask before we jump forward, which was just going back to when you mentioned you were working in a lab and that's how you got up to this point. I wondered if you could tell us perhaps what were some of your favorite projects that you worked on pre-conservation fusion? What were kind of the
Okay,
standouts for you?
sure. Well, I had so many amazing opportunities working at the lab. We worked on so many different projects. I worked on giraffe conservation, elephants, Philippine crocodiles, hellbenders, all kinds of different wildlife. But I had the opportunity to actually visit the island of Madagascar because that's where we had a huge focus on. And so I really loved working with the lemurs. My favorite was probably the eye. We also um, named many new species of lemurs. It wasn't me personally. It was like the whole team under the direction of actually my husband, Dr. Ed Lewis, and he spearheaded the Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership, which is a Malagasy NGO that we partner with. And also they are doing the brunt of the conservation research in Madagascar. So they've named 23 new species of lemurs in Madagascar, along with a bunch of several reptiles and even new plant species from the lab in Omaha. So it was really exciting to be there during the time that there was all this like groundbreaking work happening coming out of the conservation genetics lab. And from the time that I started to the time that I left, they also kind of changed a lot of their focus from being just only research to also incorporating a lot of permanent sites in Madagascar where they could really engage the local community. And they started a lot of community-based programs that helped the community and made conservation a tangible benefit to the local people.
That's really, really interesting again, and I can see why when you're why Madagascar would become such a love and such an interest when you are it seems like every time you turn over a new leaf or a new rock or something, you're discovering these incredible endemic species that,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's one that no one has seen before, it must just be the best, most incredible feeling to work
Yes.
on these things. Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Also, just working in Madagascar, it kind of just captures you. It is really such a unique place with so many different ecosystems. They have dry spiny forests and they have littoral forests and the zingy rock formations and the rainforest. It's just the amount of diversity is just incredible. And there's 112 different species of lemurs on the island now. When I first started, there was around 70. So just that huge jump in new species of primates is just unbelievable.
Yes, it's amazing in a world that I think everybody thinks is getting increasingly small when connected, and with us so able to communicate and see and have conversations like these across the world, you'd think, oh, we've discovered everything there is to discover now. But it's amazing that, yeah, just in the time that you've been working, it jumped up so many different species is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you kind of touched on the next thing I wanted to ask about actually in one of your previous answers, which was this idea of working with communities within Madagascar.
Hmm.
And something that I read on your website and really appreciated was actually you said that our goal is not to save Madagascar. We aim to provide the tools to empower the Malagasy people to find innovative solutions to help themselves. I think that's a really interesting way to look at conservation. And I just wanted to ask, what are the tools that you want to kind of help give to the Malagasy people to help them kind of do
Hmm.
these actions themselves?
Yes. Well, that's kind of like the heart of everything that we're doing and is working with communities. And, people always ask me like, how will you know conservation fusion is a success? And I always say like, if we're able to go out of business, because they don't need us anymore because they're doing it themselves. Like local people are doing it themselves. So I think one of the main things that we do first is to really go into these communities and ask questions and really truly listen for the answers.
Hmm.
I know one thing that we haven't really touched on yet is just the status of Madagascar. And, people might not realize like it's a developing country, one of the poorest countries in the world. So most people are living there on making an income of less than $2 a day. And over 95% of people are subsistence farmers, meaning they're just barely growing enough food for themselves with no excess. So when we go into these communities, we're really asking them, what are the needs of the community? So our ultimate goal is conservation. However, a lot of times they don't have a luxury of thinking about protecting the environment when they're not able to know if they can eat that day. So when we ask them these questions, we really listen to the needs of the community. So a lot of times they'll say, we need employment, we need skills, we need health care, all of those things. So some of the things that we do are to teach work. We host workshops and educational programs that teach people how to, for example, create and build fuel-efficient rocket stoves. And so it took a long time, and we worked together with engineers, and we worked together with even high school students here in the U.S. and even the University MIT to improve these rocket stoves and make them so that people in Madagascar could build them in an affordable way with local materials and even sell them. So these rocket stoves have proven to be amazing because it creates a more healthy environment for people that use them. It reduces the amount of fuel wood that they have to collect from the forest by more than 50%. It creates a more healthy environment because they cook on these open fires. The rocket stove reduces the amount of smoke, which creates a more healthy environment. So they have to spend less time and less money on going to the doctor, and they can spend more time on conservation. And that isn't actually helps protect the environment, but also meets the needs of the local community. We teach entrepreneurship and business training with local women's organizations, which helps them meet that need of an income to send their kids to school. And in the last few years, we've really shifted our education programs to really be about leadership and empowering others. And we work with a lot of teachers, community leaders, and we're really teaching people how to become local leaders and how to integrate things such as community gardens. There's one site where we work where food insecurity is huge. They live in southern Madagascar in the dry spiny forest, so they don't have access to even water to plant crops. So it took many years, and the gardens didn't work initially, but I think that they only began to work when the people started to believe in themselves and had some self-confidence, and it ended up being the local women's association that were successful in the gardening process because it became their own, like they took ownership over it. So those are some of the things that we're doing to just help local people to help themselves.
And it's good that it's the kind of practical skills to go along with the kind of more, I don't want to say academic, but the more kind of like the teacher. It's not just standing lecturing somebody, it's teaching them something that's actually useful and practical and can be passed
Yes.
down from them onto other people as well. It's a really interesting way of I keep saying interesting, but everything you say is so interesting that I'm using the same word over and over again. I need to pull out
Yeah.
a thesaurus and think of better words. um, but that's yes. I'm trying very hard not to say interesting. Fascinating. There we go. That
Yeah.
is
There you
fascinating.
go.
And yes, an interesting way of something I've said to a lot of people that I've been talking to over the last kind of few days recording the podcast has been it's really inspiring to see the different creative takes on conservation because I
Mhm.
think it's a lot of people as a have in their mind this image that conservationists are like what you used to previously do. They spend all day kind of working in a lab and on things like that element, and they don't
Mhm.
see the kind of
Mhm.
other side, the human element. So it's good to hear that about your organization's experiences with that human element as well.
Yes.
Yes. I guess on the flip side of the equation, then you've got your work in Madagascar, but then you also have your work in the US. And I wondered what you kind of do in the US to kind of promote this idea of empowering people, but without almost shifting the narrative into we need to save them, if that
Right.
makes sense. That kind of yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we talk about all the time like everything's connected. So I'm always telling people, what happens here affects what happens there and vice versa, right? So these places like Madagascar, which make up just 1%, these diverse biodiversity hotspots make up just 1% of the Earth's surface. And so we're losing that biodiversity at a very alarming rate. And so if we can do something to protect that, we're also protecting ourselves in a way as humans for our planet, because those areas of high biodiversity provide us with clean air, clean water. A lot of people don't know that more than 80% of all the medicines that we know about today have come from these areas of high biodiversity. Like I said, just making up that 1% of the Earth's surface. So what we try to do is talk about things that we can do on a local level here that can help people across the globe. So I'll just give maybe an example. We work a lot with students and on the university level, all the way from like grade school, middle school, high school, up to the university level. And we do a lot of like service learning projects. So for example, we might have a service learning day where students in the US help us cut out shapes that will be used in Madagascar to maybe make lemur puppets. And with these lemur puppets, we talk to the students about the role of lemurs in their daily lives. So, for example, the black and white rough lemur, which once had a very small population in the community that we work with, is a major seed disperser. So when they're eating mainly fruit, like 95% of their diet is fruit. So when they eat those fruits, they swallow the seeds whole. And we know from our partnership with Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership doing the research, they've had Malagasy students look at this data, and they know that when they take these seeds from the forest and just try to germinate them, it's about at a 10% germination rate. However, if they go to the forest and collect the poop from these black and white rough lemurs, the germination rate is up to 85%. So we see that they're major seed dispersers. We know about over 100 different types of trees that they help germinate, and it makes sense to the local people in Madagascar because they depend on the forest for everything. They use the forest for their food, to build their homes, for their fuel wood, for medicines, to clean the water. And then we make that tie back to kids in the US saying, hey, Madagascar produces cocoa trees, which we get chocolate from. There's a plant called the rosy periwinkle, which was used in a medicine for childhood leukemia. Everything's connected. So when they are cutting out these shapes to make the lemur puppet, they're also learning about how our entire world is connected and how important it is to protect these areas of high biodiversity. And they're also learning about ways that we can do things right here on a local level, such as recycle, reuse things, create an awareness, just educate ourselves, and then share what we've learned with others about conservation.
That's really interesting, and it is this kind of interesting bridge and cycle of it's an excellent cycle to be in of kind of this education goes both ways. It's not just
Mhm.
the kids are doing something useful in the US for the people in Madagascar, and then the story comes back, and then it's yeah a really it must be really positive reinforcement for the kids when they get
Mhm.
to they learn and they get to see, oh, this is the change in the good work or the
Ah,
good things that we can be doing. Yeah,
right.
that's really interesting. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that it also goes like that. It really is a win-win because the kids in Madagascar, sometimes we also connect schools here in the US with schools that we work with in Madagascar. So that's another really cool thing because the kids in the US are realizing like how fortunate they are to have an education because we also talk about, for example, we built a school in Madagascar, and when they learn like the children in Madagascar had to walk like 20 kilometers to get to their closest school. And they didn't have a breakfast program or lunch program. And they walked with no shoes in the hot sand, for over an hour just to get to school because education was so important to them. It switches the perspective for kids here in the US where we kind of have high truancy rates and education maybe is something that we sometimes take for granted in the developed world. So I think hearing those stories really changes this perspective and creates some gratitude for the students here in the US. And then on the flip side, the Malagasy kids are cannot even believe that children in the United States, are interested in what's in their own backyard. So it makes them realize the importance of protecting those unique species that they share a home with.
I guess yes. If you're seeing these amazing, incredible species, the wildlife is kind of normal to you.
Mhm.
It would come as a shock if somebody then turned
Yeah,
around and said, "We don't have these.
yeah,
You're the only place in the world." Yes, yeah. What
absolutely.
that's really interesting, and yes, that's another great example of kind of this cycle of reinforcing. And yeah, it's not about making the students feeling guilty or anything like that. It's about making them realize actually you have so much that
Right.
everybody else would be kind of so grateful for that yeah, it then makes them take their own education more seriously, I suppose, which is a really good thing to reinforce. And I guess something that I saw on your website that I wanted to ask about that kind of I think fits in nicely here is that you actually in engaging kids, I feel like there is no more powerful force in the world than Disney. Uh,
Sure.
So when I was doing my research, I was looking on your website and saw that you're the Disney Conservation Fund, which if people might not know what that is, but I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about what the Disney Conservation Fund is and what happened, what kind of projects they funded for you, and
Sure.
yes, how did that?
Yeah.
I basically want to know how did that come about because it's such an incredible
Yeah.
story. That's yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we're huge fans of Disney, and we're so grateful for their support. It really means a lot. And the Disney Conservation Fund actually really has a large focus on scientific research and especially community development in regards to conservation. So that made for a nice fit with us at Conservation Fusion. And we have been working with the Disney Conservation Fund for many years. So some of the things that they support, one of the main things that they support is our tree planting efforts with the kids. So in Madagascar, we work with over 18 local schools at 3 different sites, and we are planting trees with the kids. So I don't think I mentioned this yet that I did say most people in Madagascar, about 95%, are subsistence farmers, but they practice a type of agriculture called slash and burn agriculture, and it's basically just burning of an area of the forest in order to plant crops. And they mainly plant rice, and sometimes they have zebus in different areas. So that has been led to the destruction of more than 80% of the original forest in Madagascar. So what we're trying to do is protect that small amount that's left and also rebuild it. So we're working together with Madagascar Biodiversity Partnership, which has a massive production level reforestation effort based on the lemurs. So local people collect that lemur poop, they germinate the seeds. They have more than 17 of these satellite nurseries in the villages. So Disney helps us on the education side because we're working with these school kids and talking to them about the lemur cycle and why lemurs play an important role in the ecosystem. But we're also creating ownership with these children. And so every year during the rainy season, which is in January and February, we have school planting events that are sponsored by Disney. And in fact, I want to say since 2015, with support from the Disney Conservation Fund, we've planted over 279,000 trees with students to restore lemur habitat and create a healthy ecosystem for local people. So that's one of the things. And the hope is that these children are not going to want to burn down a forest that they helped create. So that's one of the things that they sponsor. They also sponsor our conservation camps, which is when we take the children in Madagascar into the forest for many of them to meet lemurs and for the first time. And we partner with the local lemur guides that work for the MVP. And they talk about how conservation has changed their lives by providing them with an income. They talk to the children about the life cycles of the lemurs, and they kind of are the local experts because they're monitoring these lemurs on a daily basis. So, conservation camp, tree planting, school activities, which include art projects, and we always have a theme every year that we focus on. And this year, actually, we have a new project that incorporates the scientific method with Disney, and we're all again partnering with the MVP and one of their Malagasy graduate students who's working on a planting commercial crops. So they're planting leche trees, cocoa trees, bamboo, which the people use to make baskets. And we have an eco club, are these teenagers that have grown up essentially with conservation fusion over the last decade. So when they started with us, maybe they were 8 years old, and today they're 18. So they're kind of the grown-ups of the community, and they're really invested in conservation. So they're the ones who are kind of spearheading this citizen science program where they're planting these commercial crops, monitoring them, and learning the scientific method, which also gives them skills that can help them to become perhaps a research assistant for international researchers who are working in their village. So it's kind of has so many different facets that provide to a sustainable future for these communities in this one region.
It's amazing actually because I hadn't heard of the Disney Conservation Fund until it was
Okay.
when it was quite recent. It was when the new Lion King, when they did the CGI
Okay.
Lion King came out, and they did a lot of work with the kind of promoting lion conservation. And I thought, how how do more people not know about this and the work that they
Yeah.
do? Because they seem to do quite a lot of, but it doesn't seem to get the most publicity. So it was interesting when I found on your website there was that link, and I wanted to hear the kind of the story of how
Yes.
they were working with you, and
Mhm.
it's an interesting it is an interesting story, and it's a great approach again I think to take is this not just teaching 5-year-olds and then letting them go off and do whatever. It's supporting as the kids who've been with you for a decade and kind of really embedding this love of nature and conservation and their wildlife in them and kind of helping them along the journey, not just at one point on in the journey, kind of supporting the whole thing. Yes.
Yes.
So it's a great approach, and yes, it must be incredibly satisfying, I suppose, to especially when you've been working with these people for a decade. It must be an incredibly satisfying thing for you to
Yes.
do as well.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's not always easy, and I like to always point out, like, there's no magic formula.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, and it took us many years to establish relationships with these communities that we're working with. And we failed a lot of times, but every time something didn't work, we went back to them and said, like, hey, this seemed like it didn't work, like, what can we do to make it work? Or what do you think, like, what are your ideas about improving this? So I think that's another important thing. I have a lot of people that contact me. For example, I mentioned a little earlier, we have this women's organization in Lavavulu that are essentially growing vegetables in the desert, which is crazy. But people contact me and say, like, what seeds are you using? Like, what's the secret formula? And I just say to them, like, there is no secret formula. There was a lot of failure, and I truly believe the gardens only became a success because these women who are not necessarily valued in their community, we had these leadership workshops with them, and we started this Girls with No Shoes Club, empowering the girls, and we did hygiene programs and talked to them about believing in themselves. And we shared the story of Walt Disney. Like, he was originally like this poor boy who carried papers on a paper route, and then eventually, because he never gave up and he just kept trying no matter what, he became very successful,
Mhm.
only because he believed in his dreams and never quit. And so I think all those things combined just created this self-esteem for these women, and that's why their garden succeeded, because they still used the same tools that we gave them the first time, but maybe the first time and the second time and the third time, they didn't really believe in themselves. And when they finally did and made the garden their own, that's when it succeeded.
It's a great thing because I think what inspired me to get into conservation was seeing people that I admired doing it and seeing their journeys and seeing and hearing these stories. So hearing a story about someone
Yes.
who wouldn't give up and would keep going is something that, yes, is something that obviously, of course, it would inspire everybody. And is, yes, it created characters that I think we all love and will all love forever and ever. So
Sure.
it's the perfect example,
Hmm.
especially and it's good to know it's not just dealing with kids; it also inspires the older members of the community as well.
Yes.
Uh, Justifies my own love of Disney. So that's that good. That's what.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
but yes, that's fantastic. And I wondered if you were to kind of looking kind of back on everything that you've done and all of these projects and all these amazing things, is there one that jumps out in your head now looking back that is kind of the most satisfying moment for you personally, or the achievement to you that stands out most in your mind is something you're exceptionally proud of? What would that be for you?
I mean, there's quite a few, but if I singled out one, I would say our work in Lava Vulu, which kind of is centered around a community that lives near the critically endangered radiated tortoises. So
Mm.
that's why we began working there. I mentioned it a little bit before. When we first arrived there, the kids said, "Wow, we really wish we had a school to go to." And I met with the village elder, the Nauda, and he said, "Hey, we're really smart people, all of us leaders here in the village, and we really believe that we could do something for our country of Madagascar. However, we never had a chance because we don't know how to read and write, and that really limited what we could do. And so they said it was like their dream that their children or grandchildren could attend school. So we were able to, it took many years. But we did build a school there, and we called it the Dream School. They came up with the name. It's called the Dream School, and we started out with 75 students. And our main thing was that we didn't want to just build a building like a shell. We wanted to have a trained teacher, and we wanted the parents to be involved, and we wanted to create this school as a foundation for conservation and education in the region. So eventually, more and more kids started coming, more parents are sending their kids to school. We had 7 teachers and about 175 kids. And on their own, the people of Lavavulu came to us again and said, we're ready for, we need to build another school to accommodate all these kids. And so one of the things that we kind of stumbled upon, but my probably is one of my proudest things, is our scholarship program. So we found that there were some kids that grew up with us that we would see every time we went back to the village, and they were like sneaking into the back of the classroom, and some of the girls even had their own babies already, their own children, and but they wanted to be in on the conservation fusion lessons. And so we said, like, are you guys in school? And they said no, because the dream schools only goes up to the grade school level, and our parents can't afford to send us to secondary school. And so we started a scholarship program. First, we started a girls empowerment club called, and they came up with the name themselves. They called it the Girls with No Shoes Club.
Mhm.
And when they started that club, it did the same thing. Like, it created this safe space for them to help them express the things that they needed. So they said, like, they'd really love to attend school. They really would love to become midwives and teachers and come back to their village and help out. So that spearheaded the scholarship program. So now we have multiple scholarship programs at multiple sites. And for the first time ever, we had students from the Dream School, for one, that qualified for and passed the national exam for the past 3 years in a row. We have more students every year, and now we offer this scholarship program. And the closest school that they can go to is about 6 hours away. But we help them with a host family, room and board, their school fees. We got them a tutor, And it has really changed the dynamics of the entire village. Like, it's changed all their lives for the better, and they have gained something that can never be taken away, which is an education.
Hmm.
So that's probably one of my favorite things. So we have two dream schools now. And it actually is one of the last strongholds of the radiated tortoise in the wild. You can find the radiated tortoises all around because even before we arrived, the people of Lavavulu have always had a special place in their culture and local traditions that protected the radiated tortoises. So they've been protecting radiated tortoises for centuries because they think of them as a special icon. And so it was a great place to really build upon that and create these tangible benefits for this community, which even increases their desire to protect these tortoises on the brink of extinction even more.
That's amazing, and I can see why it would be so satisfying because it's not just helping an individual or a single thing. It's creating these ripple effects that will go on for generations of helping a community with the kind of with the education aspect. And not only are they benefiting from personal education, they're going away and doing careers like you said, like becoming a midwife that are then going to benefit the community. It's yeah, so inspirational. And I think your answer also brought in something that I wanted to ask you about, which was your work with the radiated tortoises.
Hmm.
Because I think something I wanted to do, because you are your job is inspiring these these communities and people across the world to kind of fall in love with these amazing species. I wanted to ask you about a couple of the species that you
Sure.
work with, and if we start with the radiated tortoises, a listener might kind of look at a tortoise and think they might not be able to make them kind of distinct in their heads. They just kind of think of this
Mhm.
one generic tortoise.
Sure.
But what's particularly interesting, or what do you usually tell people about the radiated tortoise to make them kind of fall in love with this particular species?
Well, the first thing I like to share is like the radiated tortoise has got its name because of the pattern on its shell. So
Hmm.
each of the little scoots or sections of its shell looks like a sunburst, and so it like the rays of the sun, the radiated tortoise. That's how it got its name. There used to be thousands of them. In fact, I know some folks who are working on conservation in Madagascar that have been working with turtles and tortoises that said when they would drive through the south of Madagascar, they would have to stop their car so that they wouldn't run over all of these tortoises crossing the road. And today there are very, very few tortoises left in the wild, and they're on the brink of extinction due to being harvested. Previously, the culture kind of protected them. For example, the people in Lavavulu never touch the tortoises because they're sacred. And so they don't even touch them. It's like a bad omen to do so. So they protect them. However, there could be like a neighboring village, and the people in Lavavulu never eat the tortoises. However, some cultures in southern Madagascar actually harvest the tortoises for important holidays like Christmas and Easter. And they're easy to catch because they can just find them in the forest, and then they can hold them up in like a cave or something, and then they can use the meat for these special occasions. Another, and probably the main reason that they're going extinct, is because of the pet trade.
Hmm.
So on the black market, these radiated tortoises, which actually are illegal to have as pets because they're endangered species, can sell for 10,000 US dollars. So imagine these local people are making less than $2 a day if they have a job.
Hmm.
And then they're offered any amount of money for gathering these animals from the wild when their family has no food. It's easy to see like how that can happen. And
Hmm.
so the illegal pet trade is one of the main threats to these endangered tortoises. They are a really unique tortoise. They have like a dome-shaped shell with that radiated pattern on it, and they kind of can get to the size of like a bowling ball,
Hmm.
or a little bit bigger. And in the local word for them in Madagascar is sukake. So when we first started working in Lavavulu and some of the neighboring villages, as we mentioned, it's a very isolated area. It takes a long time to get there, and it's not easy to get there, and they don't have a lot of through traffic. So the local people had no idea that this was the only place that they could find these tortoises. Although they considered them sacred, they thought like the whole world was just filled with radiated tortoises, just like them. So for them to that was part of our education program in the beginning, like you have something special here, it's yours and it's up to you to kind of protect it. And so that was one of the things that was kind of eye-opening to me as well. Like they had no idea that the whole world didn't look like their own backyard. So that was kind of interesting. And like I said, Lavavulu is one of the last strongholds of the radiated tortoise. So right where the Dream School is, and the MVP team has like a research project going there with the local community as well on a permanent basis. So they support Malagasy graduate students doing research on the tortoises and the local lemurs. And that also provides income to the people living there. And they have a reforestation program there as well. And it's just instead of planting forest trees, they're planting cactus species because that's what the forest looks like. It's a dry, spiny forest. So all of those things, again, provide tangible benefits to local community based on conservation.
Mm-hmm. That's it's absolutely fascinating, and it's a species, yes, that I think a lot of people maybe take for granted. Tortoises, they assume kind of, oh, they're one tortoise. How different can it be from one another? And how, but they're all different. They're all special. They're all unique, and they're all found in these, unique, interesting places, and have these unique stories, and forming
Mhm.
a connection with the local community about them, and then also because it makes sense if somebody is offering you any amount of money for something that you can go out and easily capture, of course you would if your family
Mhm.
needs that money. So it's good that yes, you're not only helping them find other forms of employment so they don't need to do that, but you're also increasing the kind of love and appreciation for that species is
Mhm.
really interesting. So yes, I guess the next species that I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I suppose a lot of people, I think they know all about ring-tailed lemurs because they are perhaps the most famous species of lemur. But I wondered if you could tell the listeners maybe a little bit about your work with them,
Sure.
and yes, what would you what would you tell them that they might find shocking or wouldn't know about the ring-tailed lemur?
Yeah, it definitely is an iconic species in Madagascar. I guess maybe people don't know that the ringtail lemurs, at least the ones that live around the village of Lavavulu, they live in caves. So we actually take those kids also on conservation camp, and we just walk to a nearby cave. And the lemurs are all like sleeping up in the crevices. And there are actually, because it's a cave, there's like an underground pool
Uh-huh.
in there that the lemurs drink from, and they have there are blind fish that live in there. So that's kind of neat seeing that. The ring-tailed lemurs also use their scent glands to make these stink fights, which maybe people already know. But that's another unique thing about the ring-tailed lemurs.
That's amazing. And I asked the question in a way that was very, people might not know this. And then you've told me things
Mhm.
that I didn't know these things. That's amazing. Like the image of them all in a cave kind of is kind of yes, I mean it makes sense, I suppose. It's somewhere to live and to hide from predators or keep themselves safe. But yeah,
Yeah, and it's actually very hot there as well. So the cave is a cool place.
that makes perfect sense. It's really, really interesting actually. And I guess finally, the final species that I was going to ask you about was I always mess up the pronunciation of Sifakas.
Mhm,
Sifakas.
mhm. I've heard it pronounced so many different ways, so I don't think you can go wrong. Um, I always say Sifakas.
Mhm.
However, some people call them Shafak, which is how they, in fact, got their name because they make a sound that's kind of like Shafak, Shafak. And it's just like I don't know, it's kind of like a spitting sound or whatever. That is how they got their name. There's many species of Sifakas that a lot of people don't know about. So probably the most popular is the cockerel Sifaka, which is on a children's show called Zaboomafoo here in the US. And so lots of people know that species of sifaka, but there's also the Pereire sifaka, which is a completely black sifaka that's found up north only in one small region. There is the Tattersall sifaka, the Coronatus. I believe there are 8 species of sifakas. So, that's what I love about lemurs is that they come in all shapes of sizes. So the very smallest is the mouse lemur, which is the size of like almost smaller than a hamster with a tail. And a baby mouse lemur is probably not much bigger than a large marble. So they range from all the way from that size to the injury, which is in the Sifaka family, and the injury is about the size of a kindergartner. It's giant. So that's what I love about lemurs. There's so many different types of lemurs. Some are nocturnal, some are diurnal, some are up in the day and the night, and that's what allows all of these different species of endangered lemurs to live in that small percentage of the intact forest that still remains in Madagascar, because they all have different niches. So sifakas and ring-tailed lemurs and leppy lemurs and sportive lemurs and mouse lemurs can all live in the same forest because, one eats plants, one eats insects, one eats fruit. So they're not competing, and they can kind of all live together because they have different food niches and habitat niches.
That's amazing, and it makes I guess it makes sense that they would all grow to fill the gaps that the other ones don't quite. It's really interesting, and that's the thing that I think I've had the most fun when I've been preparing and kind of writing the questions and looking for doing research for the series is looking at pictures of lemurs. I think everywhere you look, they all look slightly different. They all do slightly different things. They all are slightly different sizes. And I would recommend to anybody listening, if you go beyond, I think immediately if you say lemurs, people picture maybe the eye and the ring-tailed lemur and kind of these famous ones that they maybe seen in a zoo once or they've seen in a documentary. But there are so many out there. Just go and just Google or look at any, I don't know, find a book about Madagascar and flick through the pages, because there's so many diverse, bizarre but fascinating and wonderful species there. So yes, thank you so much for telling us all about them. I guess my final couple questions for you. We're on to my final couple questions for you. The first of which is, of course, we've told people about these wonderful things, and we have probably got a lot of people interested in your work and the different species that you're kind of helping to protect, and the people that you're helping to kind of empower and give these skills to. It's all sorts of things that might inspire someone to want to act. And I wondered if someone's sitting in their home anywhere in the world, not necessarily in Madagascar or the US or where you're working, what can they be doing now to kind of help with the conservation efforts that you're kind of working on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that, because I always tell people, like, hey, we don't all have to hop on a plane and get to Madagascar to make a difference. There are so many things that we can do right in our own backyards that help conservation and help endangered lemurs and biodiversity in Madagascar. So some of the things I like to start off with is, of course, like education, like we just talked about. Learn about lemurs, learn about some of the conservation organizations that are doing things, and just share what you learned. Try to tell 3 people about what you learned about lemurs or what a difference lemurs make. And then there's so many things that we can do on a small level. For example, you can compost. I try to like walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So some of the things I do are, I compost and I recycle. So I hardly have any trash, so we're not contributing to the landfill. Every time I get a chance to reuse something, I do. So just think about, instead of grabbing a plastic water bottle every time, or just get a reusable water bottle. Imagine if everyone just stopped using plastic water bottles, what a difference we could make. Imagine even in your own neighborhood, if people composted, it would help improve their soil and it would keep things out of the landfill. It creates all these microorganisms in your yard. You can also just reuse things. For example, instead of just always buying your clothes new, you can go to a thrift shop and you can do the same thing for your furniture. And maybe if you need something, instead of going out and buying it, you can borrow it from someone. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do in our
Mhm.
daily lives that seem like they're insignificant or don't make a difference, but if everyone did them, it would add up to be a really huge difference. You know, one example is just bring your own bags to the grocery store, instead of using plastic or paper bags, and just keep reusing them. It would keep a lot of plastic out of the landfill. So all those things are just small things that we can do. And of course, like, because we're all about education, it's also about doing those things and then share those ideas with other people, and let's talk about how we can make our small actions can make a big difference
Mhm.
together.
Mhm. That's yeah, the perfect answer, because it goes beyond just helping lemurs or Madagascar, because
Hmm.
if you enjoy looking at the birds in your back garden and you keep a healthier garden by composting and helping the plants grow, then that will help those species. If you kind of use recyclable, or if you use a kind of reusable bottle, that will help. If you love whales or dolphins or something that lives in the ocean,
Sure,
that can help it. So
absolutely.
it's such good universal advice that everybody can do and everyone can do a little bit of. And especially the one with thrift shopping really spoke to me. I don't know what, whenever I buy clothes that are brand spanking new and kind of shiny and I think look really great, never get compliments. Whenever I get something from a thrift shop, everyone, how
Yeah,
cool is that? I want
yeah.
one of those.
Very unique. I mean, it's very unique. And I have a friend that works in conservation and she repurposes things. So, like, she'll buy stuff at the store and then she's an artist. So, she'll add her own touches to everything. So, it's just a chance to also kind of be unique and creative.
Mhm. Yes, and yeah, I think great advice all around. Um, I guess that's kind of the advice for if people want to kind of make these changes. But if they want to specifically, if they want to follow your work and they want to kind of support you, what websites
Mhm.
or social media, or where would you point them to come and yes, follow you directly?
Yeah, we are really good about keeping up on our Facebook page and our Instagram.
Hmm.
So those are two places you can follow us. We're working now on revamping our website. It's a little bit old, but you can still reach us on our website. And that is actually, you know, how can people support our work? Of course, like, we can always use donations, and we're really good about sharing with folks like where their donations went. That's really important to us, to be very transparent about where the dollars go. And so people can support our work by donating through. We have a platform called Network for Good. It gives you a receipt, and it helps us keep in touch with you so we can share back with you how we used your donation. And then please just follow us on our social media channels, which is Instagram, Facebook, and we have a Twitter account too.
Perfect. I will make sure to follow. I'm pretty sure I was checking before we got on the call today. I was on Instagram making sure I was already following you, because I didn't want to. I don't like to point everyone in those directions if I'm not doing it myself. So I have,
Sure.
yes, shuffle people. I will continue to shuffle people that way as well, and put the links to all of those things in the description for the episode, so people can just easily click across and find any of the resources we've talked about today. They should be easy to find. And yes, the website I think is still very good, because it's where I found all of my information for the
Oh,
questions
great.
today. So
Good.
it's perfect. Well, that kind of brings me to the end of my questions. So I guess one of the last things to say is just a massive thank you, Susie. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights into everything. It's been incredibly interesting for me. I feel like I've learned a lot. So hopefully the listeners will also
Good.
feel like they've gained something as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again for putting everything together. And yeah, from our whole team, I always tell people it's not just me, it's really a team effort. We have such a great team at Conservation Fusion. We have Lalena, our field assistant, our field manager, Innocent, who's our field manager in Kinjabatu, and then our office manager Lana in Madagascar, and we couldn't do without them. They're the ones that are doing a lot of the social media posts and updates, and keeping things going. So it's definitely a team effort, and thank you so much for all of your interest in conservation and putting together this podcast for World Lemur Day.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I feel like, yes, I'm getting a free education in lemur conservation, so I can't complain. It's the best thing for me. So thank you so, so much. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. And welcome back. Thank you so, 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 so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation and you enjoyed learning about conservation fusion and more about education in Madagascar and in the US, as well as the Disney Conservation Fund and the tortoises. And yeah, another great, I think, all-round episode. You have, even if you're not interested in one of the little individual elements, there are so many elements to Madagascar that we've covered and cover in every episode. You're bound to find one you like. So, yes, I really hope you've all found something that really engaged and excited you. For me, I think my personal favourites, I really love the tortoises. I have gone away since we recorded that interview and done a lot of Googling of images of very, very cute tortoises, and I recommend you do the same. And also, it was interesting to learn more about kind of, yes, how we can work across the world in completely different places and still build these important educational bridges, build the important links, and kind of support one another. It's really, really interesting and inspiring. And I hope that it inspires you to kind of think about the way that you act and think about the things that you do and yeah, make some little differences that can make, of course, a big, big, big difference to some people. Um, yeah. Now, before I go on a TED talk and a really inspirational kind of ramble, I suppose. I say that, it would probably just be more of a ramble than an inspirational ramble. I should probably wrap up the show. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is the penultimate episode of the series, so not much to tease left. But our next episode coming out on Friday will, of course, release on World Lemur Day. The whole series has been a celebration of lemurs, so this last episode is just a bit of a recap, some good advice, some new content from Lucia, who we talked to in episode 1, and it's a lovely cap to celebrate the fantastic lemurs, the animals that, of course, inspired this series in the first place. And yeah, I really hope you look forward to that. Of course, while you're waiting, you can investigate more about Conservation Fusion and their work. I'll put the links to everything they do in the description of this episode. And I'll also, of course, put links to our social media in the description. So if you're interested in that as well, you can follow us at Pangolin Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And yes, of course, you can follow us on your podcast streaming platform of choice as well. So yeah, make sure and do that. We're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everything else. So you don't want to miss out. Yes, that brings us to the end of today's episode. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, of course, thank you most of all for joining us as we have explored the land of the lemurs. Thank you. Bye bye.